Hello, and welcome to my channel, Reading Little Blue Books out loud. This is a little blue book. It just happens to be Little Blue Book number 493, and it is titled New Discoveries in Science, and it is written by Hereward Carrington, PhD. Now this is New Discoveries in Science 1920s, not 2020s, and this is part 2. We left off at the bottom of page 12. And the new chapter is, Why Does Your Hair Turn Gray? Perhaps the cynic might reply to this question that women's hair does not turn gray anymore. There are too many good tinting and retouching lotions on the market. But this answer is merely superficial, as all cynical answers are. Hair does continue to turn gray, and the discovery of the reason is of great scientific interest. It is hardly necessary to say that human hair is of various colors because of the coloring matter which it contains within its hollow shaft. This coloring matter is its pigmentation, and is golden, brown, black, etc., as the case may be, or combinations of various simpler colors. When the hair turns gray or white, the hair remains, but the pigmentation is somehow removed. Where has it gone, and how? Various answers to this question have been suggested. Professor Metchnikoff suggested that the coloring matter in the hair was gradually eaten up or consumed by phagocytes, which are hungry cells that attack and devour any weakened and devitalized cells or tissues in the body. It is said that the particular cells in this case are situated in the central shaft of the hair, and when they once become active, they proceed to devour all the pigment within their reach. In this manner, the hair gradually turns gray and finally white. This theory may be true in a number of cases, probably the majority, but it certainly fails to account for many instances in which hair has been turned white or blanched overnight as a result of worry or fear. In these cases, strong emotion has produced the change. Science cannot as yet explain how this comes about, and this sudden blanching of the hair is yet a mystery. In the majority of cases, however, the pigment in the hair is undoubtedly consumed. Yep. Next chapter. Why do you laugh? Oh, you will say I laugh because I am happy or amused, which may be very true, but your simple reply does not quite answer our question. You may also laugh in derision or disdain. You may laugh when at play. You may laugh at something novel, from a sense of freedom, from the mere joy of living, or even at the misfortune of another, as you so often do when looking at slapstick comedy. So there are many kinds of laughs, all of which are due to varying causes. There are probably two main causes for all laughter. One is physical, or rather physiological. The other is mental, or emotional. When we laugh in play or because we feel good, this is due to superabundance of energy. It is always the robust, hearty man who laughs, though his crabbed, anemic brother rarely does. This energy can find a ready outlet in no other manner, so finds its expression in smiles and laughter. Comedy situations of any sort, on the stage or screen or in real life, cause laughter because they release in an individual this spring of reserve energy. Laughter follows this spring of reserve. Laughter follows. This spring of reserve is loosed when the sense of the comic, the ludicrous, or the absurd is touched. And this brings us to the mental factor. Why does anything strike us as particularly funny? Many things do merely because they are unusual or novel, different clothes, or because we see someone finding it difficult to perform an action we could easily perform, lifting some light object. or because some man is abnormally stupid or foolish or ignorant. The source of laughter is in all such cases is the same. We feel a sense of superiority over that individual, and laughter arises from our consciousness or our superiority. We laugh from strength at weakness. It is ultimately a case of the survival of the fittest. It is biological. Why does your blood coagulate? If you cut your finger, or cut or break the skin on any part of your body, you begin to bleed. For the simple reason that some of the tiny blood vessels near the surface have been injured, and blood oozes from them. But after a few moments, the bleeding tends to stop, and if the cut is not a very severe one, it usually ceases of its own accord very shortly. A sort of protecting crust is formed, and the flow of blood is stopped by nature's own methods. What has happened to cause the flow to cease? Various things, the most important of which is coagulation, or clotting of the blood. As soon as it is exposed to the air, it is very interesting to see just what happens here during this process of clotting. The cause of clot formation has been found to be the precipitation of a solid form, the liquid plasma of the blood. This solid is in the form of very minute threads, and hence is termed fibrin. F-I-B-R-I-N, fibrin. The threads traverse the mass of blood in every direction, interlacing and thus confining in their meshes all the solid elements of the blood. They soon begin to construct, when cut out of the body, and form a minute meshwork or net, carrying within it the corpuscles of the blood. These corpuscles within the fibrin form the clot. After a time, a yellowish fluid forms on the outside of the clot. This is the serum, and is squeezed out of the solid constituents of the blood, after the latter dries like water from a squeezed sponge. Although about a third as much serum is formed on the clot as the solid material of the clot itself. Recent experiments conducted in Harvard University have shown that the adrenal glands, one of the ductless glands in the body, will hasten coagulation, and any strong emotion will do the same thing. As most injuries are received during some strong emotion, this is evidently another of nature's plans to hasten clotting and prevent the unnecessary loss of blood. I don't believe any of that. Why do blondes live in the north, brunettes in the south? Not sure what this has to do with science, but it's here. It is a curious fact that most of the blonde races of the earth, okay, I get it, live either in the temperate or frigid zones, while the brunettes live in the hotter tropical countries. Thus the Swedes, Norwegians, Danes, Germans, English, etc. are generally blonde or fair people, while the Spanish, French, Italians, Portuguese, Greeks, Turks, etc. are dark. The further south we go, the darker do the inhabitants become. Witness the Turks, Arabs, Moors, Hindus, etc., ending with the Negroes in Africa and other tropical countries. I am speaking, of course, of original native inhabitants of these zones, and not individuals of races who have lately migrated there. Nations once fair and blonde in coloring become brunette in time if they continue to live in southern climes. The Greeks are a good example of this. They were, as we know, originally fair with beautiful golden hair, yet today they are dark with swarthy complexions and black hair. They no more resemble the ancestors than chalk resembles cheese. Why is this? The answer undoubtedly is that the intense heat of the tropical sun darkens these people in succeeding generations as a defense against the intense heat rays. Nature begins to lay down pigmentation under the skin as a protection from the sun. This pigmentation under the skin serves to shut off the most burning rays and to protect the individual against excessive scorching. We notice an extreme example of this in the Negro, whom nature has evidently adapted to live in a hot climate. Even white people living in the tropics soon become so tanned that they remain permanently browned. I don't think that's true. The gradual darkening of the skin and hair, therefore, is a protective mechanism on the part of nature, showing us that brunettes are more adapted to warm climate than are blondes, who are the natural inhabitants of temperature of cold climes. 1920s science is kind of dumb. Why don't you feel pain when excited? Every veteran of the World War will bear testimony to the fact that wounds inflicted in the heat of battle frequently do not hurt. Pain is only experienced later on. A man may be wounded, even badly, and hardly realize it for the time being. In his anger or excitement, he does not feel any pain or notice his injury. And we do not have to go to war for proof of this. We have all of us scraped a finger and drawn blood, probably without noticing it at the time. Only when our attention is drawn to it later do we feel qualms and perhaps pain. One is almost reminded of Alice through the looking glass, when she observed the White Queen scream first, bleed next, and prick her finger last. Yet even the slightest injury will cause us pain if our attention be centered upon it at the time. A slight prick of a needle, enough to draw one drop of blood, is keenly felt if the mind is centered upon that spot at the time. Why is it that the distraction of attention, and particularly the arousing of strong emotions at the time, will prevent or inhibit the sensation of pain? The reason probably is that the nervous currents of the body at such times are almost entirely motor currents, that is, nervous currents which rush outwards from the central nervous system to the surface of the body. Pain currents are incoming currents, and if there is no room for them to get by, so to say, pain will not be experienced at the time. It is like a railroad terminal with an outgoing train on every track. There is no room for incoming trains. The incoming trains are the pain trains, which carry sensations. The outgoing trains correspond to the motor nervous currents. That is why pain is not felt at such times. As soon as the human tracks are cleared and incoming nervous currents can get through, pain is experienced for the first time. That's what they say. Why are you taller in the morning than at night? I didn't even know that was a thing. Did you? The answer to this question is the estimation of many people would be very simple. I'm not. They would contend that they are the same height in the morning and at night, and may even think that the question is more a joke than anything else. I did. And yet, if such skeptics would take the trouble to measure themselves upon arising, and again just before going to bed at night, they would find that they are a goodly fraction of an inch taller in the morning. I may have to do this. This may be much more noticeable in some cases than in others, of course, but the fact remains that an appreciable difference exists and can be clearly proved in very many instances. And why? There seems to be no reason at first sight. And yet, if true, there must be some reason after all. What happens to make us taller in the morning? The human body is held erect partly by the skeleton and partly by the muscles. The backbone, spine, is the main support which holds the body erect. But the spine is not a solid bone. If it were, we should never be enabled to bend in various directions at will. It is made up of a number of small bones called vertebrae, tightly bound together by ligaments. If these bones rested one upon another, they would tend to grate, and the jarring of the human brain and body would be terrible. In order to prevent this, nature has provided a sort of soft pillow or cushion between each vertebrae, and this cushion becomes, as it were, puffed out. At night, when the weight is taken off the spine. During the daytime, the little cushions become somewhat flattened. That is why we are taller in the morning than at night. The little cushions between the vertebrae made the difference in height. Huh. Didn't know that. Alright. Why does the baby say da and not ga? Science is weird in the 1920s. It has frequently been pointed out that da, D-A, is among the first of the voluntary sounds produced by a baby. Why is this? The reason is probably that the sounds which are first produced are those which require the least effort. These are the guttural sounds produced by the mouth organs, produced further back near the throat, and the dental sounds in the production of which the teeth or gums coordinate with the tongue. These nerves and muscles controlling these portions of the anatomy are also those connected with the primitive sensory motor activity, so that the first sounds are produced in connection with some physical motion, such as pointing. The nervous impulses which are utilized in pointing also pass over and assist in producing the first primitive sounds, which, as we have seen, are the dental and guttural. Why then does the baby say da instead of ga, G-A, when it points? The answer is to be found in the considerations which we have just applied. The act of pointing sets into motion one of the extremities of the body, the nervous process, one of whose divisions goes into this extremity, can naturally reach by one of its other divisions more easily the muscles of the frontal part of the mouth, belonging to the periphery, surface of the body. Then the muscles of the throat belong to a different and interior system of muscular activity. Try yourself to accompanying a pointing movement by a dental or guttural sound. The latter seems more natural. See Max Meyer's The Fundamentals of Human Behavior. Okay, so it says Max Meyer. Why do objects have different colors? Objects appear to us to have different colors. Some of them are green, some are red, some blue, some black, etc. Yet modern science has shown us that no such thing as color exists in the universe at all. It has. Nothing is colored. Color does not exist upon the object. Color exists in the human mind, and objects merely appear to us to be colored. We put the color onto them, so to speak. Color is a quality of an object. Why then do objects appear to us to have different colors? The reason for this is that the surface of the object is so made or constituted that certain light rays of the visible spectrum are absorbed, while others are reflected. Those which are thus reflected represents the color of the object. If all the light rays were thus absorbed and none reflected, the object would become invisible to us, but no object does this. If such a substance could be discovered, we should have the Invisible Man of H.G. Wells. Color does not exist on the object, therefore, but is merely a quality of the object, and different objects appear to have to some varying colors because of their varying absorption and reflecting qualities. Similarly, no such thing as sound exists in the universe. If there were no living being on our globe, no such thing as sound could exist. A train of cars might fall off a high bridge with a terrific crash, but no sound would be emitted. Sound consists of air vibrations, which are in themselves soundless. These impinge upon our ears, are carried to the brain, and there transformed into sound. We then hear them. But these air vibrations in themselves are soundless. They might go on forever if no human ear intercepted them to space, and no sound would ever be heard. We feel that we might take a pair of scissors, so to speak, and snip them in the middle before they reach the human, and thus destroy them. In such case, no sound would ever reach us. Sound, like color, is really non-existent. And I think I'll stop there for part 2, and we'll see you back in part 3.